Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The crimson door whispered open, a silent guardian to a realm of untold secrets. Within, an extraordinary collection awaited. Shoes, each a work of art, adorned the interior, their colors a spectrum of femininity. Among them, a pair glittered with seductive allure, ruby stilettos that mirrored light like a spilled gem. A solitary figure, Corey, hesitantly approached this hidden sanctuary. The air thickened with anticipation as he took each step, his heartbeat echoing in the confined silence. At the threshold, he paused, caught between curiosity and apprehension. In the background, the house stood still, holding its breath. "Plenty of time," he whispered to himself, fingers trembling as they reached for the red stilettos that had haunted his dreams. The shoes felt substantial in his hands, heavier than he'd expected. Corey lowered himself onto the plush ottoman in the center of the closet, the cool air raising goosebumps on his arms. He slipped off his plain white socks and eased his right foot into the first shoe. It was snug, but not uncomfortable. His mother's feet were only slightly smaller than his own. Standing up in heels for the first time felt like balancing on tiptoes on the edge of a cliff. Terrifying, yet exhilarating. He took a few wobbly steps, arms outstretched for balance, before finding his center of gravity. A nervous laugh escaped his lips as he caught sight of his reflection in the full-length mirror. A 6-foot man with disheveled blonde hair, wearing a plain gray t-shirt, faded jeans, and magnificent red stilettos. But it wasn't enough. His gaze drifted to the clothing section of the closet, where Patricia's extensive collection hung in neat, color-coded rows. The black pencil skirt had always caught his attention, the way it hugged her hips when she dressed for her job as a real estate agent, and beside it, a white silk blouse with delicate pearl buttons that shimmered under light. "Just this once," he whispered to the empty room.
"Just to see."
Removing his jeans proved awkward in heels, but he managed without toppling over. The pencil skirt slid up his legs with surprising ease, though it fit snugly around his waist. The silk blouse felt cool and smooth against his skin as he fastened each button with meticulous care. His movements became more confident with each passing minute, as though his body had been waiting for this moment. Corey returned to the mirror, hardly recognizing the person staring back. Something was still missing. He spotted his mother's makeup bag on her vanity and, after only a moment's hesitation, reached for it. With shaking hands, he applied a light coat of foundation, some blush, and, with extreme caution, a stroke of his mother's favorite red lipstick that matched the shoes perfectly. The transformation wasn't perfect. His jawline remained too angular, his shoulders too broad, but something in his eyes had changed. They sparkled with recognition, as though seeing his true self for the first time. So entranced was he by his reflection that he didn't hear the front door open, didn't register the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs, didn't notice his mother's presence until she gasped in the doorway. "Corey?" Ice flooded his veins. The lipstick tube clattered to the floor, leaving a streak of red on the cream carpet. Shame and fear collided in his chest as he scrambled for words that wouldn't come. Patricia's expression shifted from shock to something unreadable as she stepped into the closet. Her gaze traveled from the stilettos to the skirt to the carefully applied lipstick.
"Mom, I can explain,"
he finally managed, voice cracking. "It's not... I was just..." Patricia raised her hand, silencing him. The next few seconds stretched into eternity as Corey braced himself for anger, disgust, disappointment, any of the reactions he'd feared his entire life. Instead, his mother's face softened into a smile so gentle it made his chest ache. "I've always wanted a daughter," she said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and miraculous. Corey blinked rapidly, certain he'd misheard. "You're not angry?" he whispered. Patricia moved closer, her eyes glistening. "How could I be angry at you for being who you are?" She reached out, her fingers gently wiping away a smudge of lipstick from the corner of his mouth. "Though we should definitely get you some makeup lessons." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside him, releasing decades of tension. "I don't understand. I've suspected for years," she admitted, sitting on the edge of the ottoman. "The way you looked at my clothes, how you'd linger when we passed women's boutiques at the mall." She patted the space beside her, and Corey carefully lowered himself, mindful of the skirt. "I just waited for you to be ready to tell me." "I wasn't sure myself," Corey confessed. "I still don't know what this means." Patricia took his hand, her touch anchoring him in the whirlwind of emotions. "It means whatever you want it to mean. And whatever that is, I'm here." The tears came then, hot and cleansing. Patricia wrapped her arms around him, holding him as he hadn't been held since childhood. When the tears subsided, she leaned back with a conspiratorial smile. "Those shoes look better on you than they ever did on me." She stood and offered her hand. "What do you say we go shopping this weekend? Get you some things that are actually your size?" Corey took her hand, rising unsteadily in the red stilettos. "I'd like that." Patricia's eyes twinkled. "Have you ever thought about what name you'd choose if you were my daughter instead of my son?" The question struck him with unexpected force. He'd never allowed himself to imagine that far, but now that the door had been opened, the answer came immediately.
"Ella,"
he said, the name feeling right on his tongue. "I'd be Ella." Patricia squeezed his hand. "Ella, it suits you." The mall bustled with Saturday afternoon shoppers. Corey, trying to think of himself as Ella now, had never felt more exposed. He'd dressed conservatively for this first public outing. Jeans and a simple blue button-down shirt from his regular wardrobe. Patricia walked beside him, projecting an air of casual confidence that Ella desperately tried to absorb. "Where should we start?" Patricia asked, surveying the stores lining the main concourse. Ella's mouth went dry. "I don't know. This is all new." Patricia linked their arms together. "How about we begin with the basics? Some nice jeans cut for a feminine figure, a few tops, maybe a dress or two." They entered a department store, making their way to the women's section. Ella felt conspicuous, convinced everyone was staring, judging. But most shoppers barely glanced their way, absorbed in their own pursuits. Patricia selected a few items and guided Ella toward the fitting rooms. The attendant, a woman in her 50s with a name tag reading Margaret, smiled professionally. "My daughter needs to try these on," Patricia said, the words flowing so naturally that Ella almost looked around for this daughter before realizing Patricia meant her. Margaret nodded, handing Ella a plastic number. "The rooms on the left are available. Let me know if you need different sizes." Inside the fitting room, Ella's hands shook as she unbuttoned her shirt. The first item was a soft pink cashmere sweater. She pulled it over her head, adjusting it over her flat chest, then stepped into a pair of dark wash jeans designed to accentuate curves she didn't possess. Her reflection was a strange hybrid, masculine features above, attempts at femininity below. Disappointment settled heavy in her stomach. A knock at the door. "How's it going?" Patricia asked. "It's not working," Ella admitted. "I look ridiculous. May I come in?" Ella unlatched the door. Patricia slipped inside, assessing her with an expert eye. "The problem isn't the clothes," she said gently. "We need to address the foundation first." She handed Ella her regular clothes. "Get dressed. We're making a detour." 30 minutes later, they entered a specialty shop in a quieter corner of the mall. A bell tinkled as they stepped inside. The boutique was intimate, with tasteful displays of undergarments and what Ella recognized as breast forms and shapewear designed specifically for transgender women. A tall woman with elegant silver hair approached them.
Welcome to Foundations. I'm Diana. How can I help you today?
Patricia looked to Ella, giving her space to speak for herself. "I'm transitioning," Ella said, the word both foreign and right on her tongue. "I need everything, I guess." Diana's smile was warm. "Then you've come to the right place. Let's start with measurements, and we'll go from there." The next hour passed in a blur of numbers, fabric samples, and gentle education. Diana helped Ella select breast forms that matched her frame, shapewear to create a more feminine silhouette, and undergarments that would work with various outfit styles. "These will make a world of difference," Diana assured her, packing their purchases. "When you're ready for more permanent solutions, we can talk about hormones and other options, but these will help you feel more yourself right now." Their next stop was a salon where Patricia had made an impromptu appointment. The stylist, a young man with vibrant blue hair, listened attentively as Ella tried to articulate what she wanted. "Nothing too dramatic yet," she explained, "but something that looks intentionally feminine." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your natural blonde color is gorgeous. We'll keep that. I'm thinking we shape it to soften your jawline. Maybe some long layers that you can style different ways while you're growing it out." As locks of blonde hair fell to the floor, Ella watched her reflection transform. The haircut wasn't drastically different from her previous style, but the subtle changes, a softer line here, a deliberate layer there, shifted the entire frame of her face toward femininity. Their final stop was a makeup counter where a consultant named Regina spent an hour teaching Ella the basics. Foundation to minimize shadow from facial hair, contouring to soften angular features, and techniques for eyes and lips that enhanced without overwhelming. "Makeup is art, not mask," Regina explained, demonstrating a subtle daytime look. "It should enhance what's already beautiful about you." By the time they returned to the original department store, Ella stood taller, moved with more confidence. The foundation garments gave her a feminine silhouette. Her styled hair framed her face softly. Subtle makeup enhanced her features. When she tried on the same pink sweater and jeans, the difference was remarkable. "Oh," she breathed, turning to see herself from different angles. "Oh, wow." Patricia appeared in the mirror behind her, eyes shining. "There she is. There's my Ella." They left the mall with bags containing a modest but versatile wardrobe, jeans, skirts, blouses, sweaters, a navy blue dress for more formal occasions, and, to Ella's simultaneous terror and delight, a pair of pink kitten heels and floral print dresses, that Patricia insisted were perfect for the approaching spring season. On the drive home, Patricia reached over and squeezed Ella's hand. "This is just the beginning, you know. There's so much ahead, good and challenging, but you won't face any of it alone." Ella looked down at their intertwined fingers, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you. For today. For everything." Patricia kept her eyes on the road, but her voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me with your truth. It's the greatest gift you could give me." The weeks that followed passed in a whirlwind of discovery. Ella began living as herself within the safe confines of home, wearing her new clothes, practicing makeup, and learning to move with a new awareness of her body. Patricia became her coach, cheerleader, and confidant, offering guidance without pressure. 3 months after that fateful day in the closet, Ella sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her laptop while Patricia prepared dinner. The aroma of garlic and tomato sauce filled the kitchen as Patricia stirred a pot of pasta sauce. "I've been researching hormone therapy," Ella said, looking up from the screen. "There's a clinic downtown that specializes in transgender healthcare." Patricia set down her wooden spoon and turned. "Is that something you're considering?" Ella nodded, closing the laptop. "I think so. Everything I've done so far, the clothes, the makeup, living as Ella at home, it all feels right. But every morning I still wake up in this body that doesn't match who I am inside." Patricia wiped her hands on a dish towel and sat across from her daughter. "What does the process involve?" "I'd need to meet with specialists, doctors, therapists. There would be physical changes, some reversible, some permanent." Ella twisted a strand of her growing blonde hair. "It's scary, but not as scary as the thought of never trying." "Then I think you have your answer." Patricia reached across the table. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you every step." The next day, Ella made the call to schedule her first appointment. As she hung up the phone, a mixture of terror and exhilaration coursed through her. She caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror, wearing a soft green sweater dress that complemented her blonde hair, which now brushed her shoulders. The person looking back at her was still a work in progress, but unmistakably Ella. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw her mother's best friend, Caroline, standing on the porch with a casserole dish. Caroline had been a fixture in their lives for decades, stopping by regularly with food and gossip. Panic seized Ella's chest. Since beginning her transition, she had avoided all visitors, letting Patricia maintain their social connections. Caroline didn't know about Ella. No one outside the house did. The doorbell rang again. Ella considered hiding, pretending no one was home, but Caroline's car was clearly visible in the driveway, and the woman's persistence was legendary. Taking a deep breath, Ella smoothed her dress and opened the door. Caroline's greeting died on her lips as confusion crossed her face. "Oh, I'm sorry. I must have the wrong house. I was looking for Patricia." "Caroline, it's me," Ella said, her voice higher than her old tone, but unmistakably recognizable. She stopped, corrected herself. "It's Ella now. I'm Patricia's daughter." Caroline's eyes widened as recognition dawned. She stood frozen on the doorstep, the casserole dish tilted precariously in her hands. "May I come in?" she asked finally, her voice carefully neutral. Ella stepped aside, heart hammering. She led Caroline to the kitchen, where the older woman set down her dish with deliberate movements. "Patricia mentioned she'd be working late tonight," Caroline said, removing her coat. I thought I'd drop off dinner, but I see there's much more to catch up on. Ella cleared her throat. Mom has been incredible through all of this. I only started transitioning a few months ago. Caroline sat at the kitchen table, her expression unreadable. I've known you since you were born, she said slowly. I remember when Patricia brought you home from the hospital. I'm still the same person, Ella said, the words coming out more pleading than she intended. Just finally being honest about who I am. Caroline was quiet for a long moment, studying Ella's face. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. You have your mother's eyes. I never noticed that before. The simple observation, free of judgment, loosened something in Ella's chest. She sat across from Caroline, cautiously optimistic. This must be quite an adjustment, Caroline continued. For both of you. It is, Ella admitted. But it also feels like coming home to myself. Caroline reached across the table and patted Ella's hand. Well, I must say, that dress is lovely with your coloring. Patricia always did have an eye for what suits people. The conversation shifted then, Caroline filling Ella in on neighborhood news, as naturally as if they'd been having these chats forever. By the time Patricia returned home, the two were laughing over coffee, the casserole warming in the oven. Patricia paused in the doorway, taking in the scene with visible relief. I see you two have met. Caroline rose to hug her friend. You might have given me some warning, she murmured, though there was no reproach in her voice. It wasn't my story to tell, Patricia replied simply. Later, after Caroline had left with promises to return soon, Patricia found Ella in the living room, staring pensively out the window. That went better than I expected, Ella said, without turning around. Patricia sat beside her on the window seat. Caroline's known me long enough to know I wouldn't tolerate anyone being unkind to my daughter. Ella leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. Do you think everyone will be so accepting? No, Patricia answered honestly. Some people will struggle. Some might never understand. But the ones who truly matter will make the effort. The truth of those words was tested in the months that followed. Ella began hormone therapy, each small physical change affirming her internal identity. As her features softened and her body began to reshape itself, the woman she had always been emerged more fully into the world. Some relationships strained under the weight of her transition. An uncle stopped coming to family gatherings. A cousin unfriended her on social media. But for each person who stepped away, someone else stepped closer, offering support she hadn't expected. Patricia's colleagues brought welcome to the world gifts as though Ella had just been born in a way. She had. Caroline's book club invited her to join, the women treating her as they would any new member. And most surprisingly, her father's brother, a man she'd always perceived as traditionally masculine and potentially judgmental, sent a handwritten card that read simply, "Family is family. Looking forward to meeting my niece." 1 year after trying on those fateful red stilettos, Ella stood before her closet, now filled with her own clothes, tailored to her transformed body. Her blonde hair fell past her shoulders in soft waves. The hormone therapy had given her subtle curves, softened her jawline, and redistributed fat in ways that aligned her outer appearance with her inner self. She selected a floral dress, one of Patricia's first gifts, that now fit perfectly thanks to the changes in her body. She paired it with the pink kitten heels that had become her favorite everyday shoes. Downstairs, Patricia was preparing a special dinner. It was the anniversary of Ella's rebirth, as they had come to think of it, and they had planned a small celebration with their closest friends, those who had walked this journey alongside them. Ella applied her makeup with the skill that came from daily practice, no longer needing to hide masculine features, but simply enhancing her natural beauty. The face that looked back at her from the mirror was serene, confident, at peace in a way the person she used to be had never known. The doorbell chimed. Voices filled the entryway as Patricia welcomed their first guests. Ella took a final look in the mirror, straightened her dress, and headed downstairs to join her mother, to celebrate not just her transition, but the gift of unconditional love that had made it possible. As she descended the stairs, conversation paused. Caroline was the first to spot her, raising a glass in toast. "To Ella," she called, "to living authentically." The other guests, a mix of Patricia's friends who had become Ella's supporters, echoed the sentiment. Patricia moved to stand beside her daughter, wrapping an arm around her waist. "To my beautiful daughter," she added, "who had the courage to become herself." Ella looked around at the gathering, at these people who had chosen to embrace her truth, and felt a completeness she'd never imagined possible. "To all of you," she replied, voice steady and clear, "for showing me that love is stronger than fear." The evening flowed with food, laughter, and stories. Ella moved among the guests with an ease that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Her new life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still painful moments, but it was authentic. It was hers. Later, as the last guests departed, Patricia found Ella in the kitchen, rinsing glasses at the sink. "Happy anniversary," she said, leaning against the counter. Ella smiled, setting aside a wine glass. "I was thinking about those red stilettos. How terrified I was when you caught me. And now look at you." Pride radiated from Patricia's face. "Living fully as yourself." "Because you gave me permission to try," Ella said. "Not everyone gets that gift." Patricia reached for her daughter's hand. "Perhaps that's our next chapter. Finding ways to help others who don't have the support you did." Ella squeezed her mother's fingers, thinking of the journey ahead, not just her own continuing transition, but the possibility of using her experience to light the way for others. "I'd like that," she said simply. Outside the kitchen window, stars punctuated the night sky. Inside, two women stood hand in hand, bound not just by blood, but by the courage to embrace truth. The red stilettos that had started their journey sat in a place of honor on Ella's dresser, a reminder that sometimes the most daring steps lead exactly where we're meant to be. The transition from Corey to Ella hadn't been the end of a story, but the beginning of one, a story of becoming, of truth-telling, of coming home to oneself. And though the road ahead would hold its own challenges, Ella would walk it in shoes that fit perfectly, surrounded by love strong enough to weather any storm.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!